What is up, everyone? StonePost34, bringing you actually more of growing up with StonePost. Real quick, this gameplay. Every time I play this 3v3v3, I tell you what, man, I get so, it's so intense. It's so much fun, but I can only play like one or two games, and then I get sensory overload. It is fun. It's just it's a lot for me. So anyway, this is a little gameplay we got. We don't play it a lot, but anyway, hope you enjoyed the gameplay. It's a little bit longer, and that's why I chose it. So today's Growing Up with StonePost. If you've watched any of the, I think it was my last video, I talked about this time of year. I mean, this is kind of a tough time of year for me. My grandfather passed away in February, and I don't know why. Just like right after the holidays, it always reminds me of that time. And I just said, I haven't been like super motivated on YouTube, and I don't know if I'm depressed, but it just brings back some pretty crappy memories. So let me tell you about my grandfather. My grandfather was a Marine in World War II in Iwo Jima, farmer, lived in Wellington, Kansas, which is where most of my family is from, which is, if you've watched any of the Growing Up with StonePost, you probably heard me talk about Wellington. But farmer, and then he also worked for Cessna in Wichita. He was an engineer for Cessna, so he was a part-time farmer. He actually farmed our family ground. And anyway, actually, my mom's adopted, so it doesn't even really matter, to tell you the truth. I don't know why I brought that up, but my mom is adopted, and but him and I were really close growing up. If you watched any of my videos on fishing, he was the one that taught me how to fish. He's just a solid guy. I mean, him and I, my brother got along with my grandfather a lot, my other grandfather more than my grandpa Cubic. He got along with him better because they both did woodworking and some other things, but my grandpa Cubic and I were really, really close. And so let me just tell you the story. Okay, so my grandmother passes away. My grandma Cubic passes away. And my grandpa goes to a high school reunion in Caldwell. And he'd been single for a couple years, if I remember right. So he goes to this high school reunion in Caldwell, Kansas, and meets Marguerite, which was one of his girlfriends from high school. And she was widowed also, and they hit it off again almost 50 years later, and they started dating. And I remember when he told me, he's like, I rekindled a relationship. And I'm like, well, okay, with who? I mean, how long ago that have to be? Because he'd been married to my grandmother for 40-some years. And he said Marguerite is my high school sweetheart. And long story short, they wound up getting married within like 6 months of meeting each other. And I helped my grandfather move from Wellington. He moved up to Kansas City because that's where she lived. And I remember I was selling real estate at the time, and I spent a day down there and then a day moving up and then moving all this stuff. And just how excited he was. It was so refreshing because my grandmother that passed away, she had emphysema, and I don't want to say it was a chore, but it kind of was. I mean, her last 10 years were pretty painful for everyone just because she was in such poor health, and he had to take care of her. She was on oxygen and all sorts of things. It was just cool to see him excited about, he reminded me of like a schoolboy. And so we move him up here, and they get married at my grandparents. My parents' house. My grandpa and Marguerite got married there, and everything was great. Everything was perfect. I mean, we did Christmas, we did all this stuff, and it was cool. I got to tell you, it was really cool. So the first week in February, I actually went out to a bar, came back, and I got a phone call about 4 o'clock in the morning. And it was my mom, pretty emotional, and she said, your grandfather's in the hospital. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange because he was in pretty good health. I mean, he was a farmer, occasional cold. He did have some hip issues, but other than that, I mean, really good shape. So I'm like, okay. I said, do you need me to come up? She goes, yes, I think you need to come up. So he's in the hospital in Kansas City. So I get there, and all of a sudden it becomes really clear what has happened. And I'll leave in the description some of the news articles and stuff of what happened. And this was 98, and sorry. Basically, my grandfather got attacked. He was asleep in his bed with Marguerite up in Kansas City, and he got bludgeoned with a baseball bat, and across the knees, across his hands, across his face. It was pretty bad, and I'm trying to hold it together if you can't tell. Anyway, so he was basically in the hospital. Marguerite was attacked as well. She made it to the bathroom where she had a phone and was able to call 911. So the police show up. Obviously, they're still in the house. The police show up, and I'll never forget this fucker. Excuse my language. I don't cuss very much, at least not in my videos. But her neighbor, Francis Patrick Doyle, was found behind the couch with a baseball bat. Blood everywhere, and unfortunately I did get to see some of the pictures of the room and all that. But I mean, it's the worst crime scene you could ever imagine. I mean, blood splatter from ceiling to floor to carpet to pools of blood. It just unbelievable. I'm sorry, I should have told you this is kind of graphic, but anyway, so he was found behind the couch and arrested on the spot. My grandfather and Marguerite were taken to the hospital. Long story short, she suffered severe brain damage, broken pelvis, broken femur, broken wrist, broken everything. I mean, you can't, just everything. My grandfather was not a big guy. My grandfather was, he was about 5'7", and he's probably 5'10" in his day, but you shrink as you get older. 5'7" at that time, and probably weighed about 150, 160 pounds. Well, this Francis Patrick Doyle was 6'2" and about 220 pounds, and he was a retired postal worker, for whatever that's worth. And apparently Marguerite and him had dated a little bit, and he was really jealous that she got married and basically attacked and eventually killed. My grandfather died 4 days later in the hospital from blunt force trauma and all sorts of stuff. So that's why this time of year is a little tough. So I'll leave in the description just some of the articles. You guys can read on it. It was tough. It still is a little bit tough. He was a great guy. The only bright side, and I don't even know if this is a bright side, we found out through the autopsy because it went to court, and then eventually the Supreme Court. He tried to appeal it through the Supreme Court. But through the autopsy, we figured out, and my grandfather knew this, he had stage 3 cancer, and I'm trying to remember what it was. It wasn't pancreatic. It was something in his stomach. I don't know if it was liver or what, and I don't want to say that. I don't know. I don't know which I would choose to see my grandfather die, slowly or quickly, because cancer's just as bad. So I don't know if that was a blessing or not. And it kind of made sense why they got married so quick. I mean, I couldn't figure it. Everyone's just like, wow, Grandpa's pretty conservative, and this happened really quick, guys. So anyway, that is super serious, growing up with Stone Post. And like I said, check out some of the articles. I'll leave it in the description. And this is a bit of a long gameplay. So anyway, guys, take care as always. This is Stone Post 34.
Hustler!